The Namibian newspaper today reported an upper-class housing boom in Namibia's prime holiday destination of Swakopmund. For a closer look at the housing sector in that country, we're now joined by at our NBC studios in Windhoek by Namene Kalili, Manager Research and Competitor Intelligence Unit at FNB Namibia. Namene, thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about this housing boom, upper class, as the newspaper says, in Swakopmund. What's driving that?
Well, we'll have to go back to 2008, mostly because of what they call the uranium rush. Your uranium price skyrocketed to about $70 an ounce, and hence a lot of these marginal deposits of uranium in Namibia became rather interesting at that point in time. So people started taking out EPLs. Literally every block of EPLs for uranium was exploited or taken out, and a lot of executives were supposed to come to do a lot of the prospecting, the engineering works and all of that. So the houses were kind of designed for such executives. And now that the price is down to about $52 an ounce, it doesn't look like some of them are ever going to materialize. So you've got this oversupply of pretty expensive houses, and a lot of them have been marked down over the past year. Our current data already tells us that year on year, these prices are down about 17%. So they're pretty attractive and affordable for many people.
Okay, so the prices are coming down, but we are told that they're still much higher than what you'd seen in an urban centre like Windhoek. They're still regarded as prime properties in prime land. Who's taking them up?
Well, according to the reports, it's a lot of foreigners, which I'm not, I can't really comment much on because we look mostly at the local market. But we do know that a lot of the Namibians that are participating in the property market at the coast are mortgaging their properties in Windhoek, where your price escalations are much more significant. The other thing in terms of pricing, if you're going to look in terms of value, you get much better value for money in Swakopmund. The houses are much bigger, your specifications are much better, and you've got also this opulent factor that comes in where you find properties with 2 double garages, which is not that common in Windhoek. So if you're going to look at a property market in terms of, or for something in the range of 2 million Namibian dollars, for instance, in Windhoek you're going to get a pretty average home, whereas in Swakopmund you're going to get a pretty big property close to the ocean.
Oh, you've made it so attractive to me. Pity about my credit rating. Let's talk about these foreigners and whether or not in bringing foreign currency that leverages their position as buyers, and is that the reason why a lot of the locals are being crowded out, as it were?
Well, it certainly does, but the first point of concern is some of these countries which have been listed are countries which have got very weak financial systems. So there may be an element of, how can I say, money that comes from the black market that's filtering through Namibia. And then also the report didn't really go into details about the conclusion of these results, because of late the Financial Intelligence Center stepped in, whereby whether you're Namibian or foreign buyer, you have to show that your revenue source is actually genuine and legitimate before the transaction can go through. So these are just probably signatures that have been given to estate agents. So these are not deals that have been concluded as yet. And the other point is also most of the deeds office was definitely closed during the festive season. So I don't think anything has been registered. And also the bank's mortgage departments have been very quiet over the festive season.
Let's move just beyond Swakopmund.
And then the other point is also the countries like South Africa, where you do find buyers coming in. The difference there is that Namibia doesn't have capital gains tax, whereas South Africa does. So you could be looking at buyers that are trying to beat the capital gains tax in South Africa and buy in a market where you've got very strong appreciation and without the capital gains tax that they've accustomed to in South Africa.
Okay, that's a great point that you've raised. But let's move beyond Swakopmund, Windhoek, and let's talk about the property sector in Namibia in general. In most developed economies, we do know what's happened to property. It was really the nucleus, many would argue, of the global recession and the credit problems we've seen. As a result, banks have become much stricter with their mortgage rules. Interest rates are a lot lower. So although it's attractive to buy, it's not a great investment in these markets. So why is it that Namibia has bucked the trend?
I think the biggest reason for that is just that in terms of supply has been very, very low in Namibia for a very long time. We're talking probably from 2004. You've seen that there's been a huge dip in new supply of new land. That's the first thing. So obviously the demand is pretty high, and especially in the capital. And that is where the prices are actually boiling over, is in the capital, and that's the hub, because that accounts for about 40% of the country's mortgage market. So now you've got all these buyers that are hungry for land, hungry for properties, and they've been able to beat the international trend.
All right.
The other thing is also that...
Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. The other point is also, what is it? In terms of banking sector, our lending has been relaxed to a certain degree. There was a time, but that was around about 2008, when the banks required deposits to buy properties, which is no longer the case anymore. So first-time buyers do have that opportunity to buy. And you've had a lot of people that have been in the rental market for a long time, so they've built up some strong capital bases. And typically Namibia has got a very, very strong savings culture. We are more a savings population than actually a credit population.
Yeah, okay. That's the difference between you and me then, of course. And then finally, let's talk about land, because you're saying now there's this oversupply of land and obviously serviced land, but apparently this was the limitation in the past, as you've alluded to. But with more and more demand, apparently there's now increasingly a shortage of land for all of these buyers that want to enter the property market. So does the land factor mean that going forward, it's going to inflate the prices, because it's really going to be a question of where there's availability and who's willing to pay?
Of course. The buyers have become very discerning nowadays, and they all want custom-made houses fit to their specifications. Your standard 4-room house or 3-bedroom house is not good enough anymore. They want to put their personalities through in their properties. And so therefore they tend to prefer virgin land, so that they can build what it is that they want. But that has been in short supply for a long time, and it's got more to do with the financial positions of most of the municipalities, but they're not really in a position to be servicing land. They complain that land is pretty expensive to service, but if you look at your selling price, your upset price compared to your selling price at most of these land auctions, they're 3-4 times higher than your upset price. So people are willing to pay good money for pieces of land. I think the last auction that we had, it was in Windhoek, around about November, if I'm not mistaken, and there you had land going for 1,000 Namibian dollars per square meters, which is pretty high, considering that it's never been that high. I mean, we've had higher income areas that probably bordered on $500-600 a square meters, but last year it just went crazy.